please watch cautiously. We speak from our experiences only. Please seek professional help for a gambling addiction.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bet Free Life. I'm Christina, and Brian is on vacation with his family for spring break, and he didn't tell me until like yesterday. But that's okay because we have our friend Kitty Martz, who is the executive director of Voices of Problem Gambling Recovery, here to talk with us or talk with me. But if you have any questions, just shoot them in the chat, and I'll do my best to keep on top of that. But if you've been here before, you know I'm a train wreck with that. So, hi, Kitty.
Hi, train wreck. What's that about?
When it's me, like the last we didn't do it last week because it was Easter. But the week after week before I'd done it on my own, which our buddy Brian Ward showed up halfway through and saved me. But it's a little because Brian does a lot. I mean, I'm sure people think I do most of it. You know, that just seems like what most people would think. But Brian does a lot of like the pre-show, and he knows how to work all the stream stuff and keep up with everything. And I'm a little bit behind on that. So he does make that part quite a bit easier. So enough about that. Tell us about you.
Nope. I want to stay on that for a moment. So that's
you're going to witness a live therapy session, everyone.
Yes. Well, I mean, I don't know what language we're allowed to use here. Is this going to be permanently on the yeah, okay. So I saw a comedy thing recently. I don't remember who it was, but one of the things that the comedian covered was just some skill she had that she learned from her friend's older sister. And so she was I won't get into it, but the blah, blah queen. And so as a young person, she heard this friend's older sister be like, I'm the queen of this thing. And she's like, wow. So you can just walk around, just kind of like blowing your own horn saying, I'm really good at something. I'm the queen, because we're not really socialized to do that, are we? To be like, I am great at doing live feeds and I just nail it. And so we get more used to kind of selling ourselves short, don't we?
I always do. Anything I do. I'd just rather do that than oversell myself. So it just feels easier. But, I'm going to write that down and talk with my therapist about that.
That sounds good. Okay. Not me. Yeah. But I'm working on kind of Goldilocksing it, just balance of, I can always do better, but some things I do well, or I try hard, or I show up, or I have courage, or I'm figuring it out, or it's better than the last time. And I'm just kind of aware of just how that's become the norm for us to walk around being self-deprecating. And I'm not here for it. I'm good at a lot of things, and you are too.
Well, thank you. And you're always really good about making me feel better. So Kitty, what have you been up to? What are you doing right now?
I'm hanging out in my room. Do you want to see this? Look at this. This is like life after. I have a sunken jacuzzi tub.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah. That is
I'm
nice.
not having a bad time. No, I had to switch rooms in my hotel because I didn't have good internet. But silver lining. So I'm in Salt Lake City with Brian Ward. I think he's here. Brian, are you here?
He is. He said 2 of my favorite people. I had to show some recognition there.
No. I'm going to hide that light with my head. So Brian gave a presentation at the National Conference for Smart Recovery, and nailed it. He was so articulate and entertaining in helping people understand how process addictions are in some ways alike with substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder, that there's also pretty profound differences. Like one of the things people mentioned when we do a cost benefit analysis of like reasons to gamble and reasons not to. Did you have good reasons to gamble?
Well, there were times I thought so. Yeah. Like if I were celebrating something, right? Birthday, does that count? Like, and then it just got to the point where my reasons to gamble were just to gamble.
Yeah. Or if you're sad or lonely or need to
stressed, big one. Just trying to get like emotionally overwhelmed. That was a big thing for me. I think there towards the end of my addiction, like I was in constant emotional overwhelm, which is something I still struggle with sometimes, but at least now I deal with it in a much healthier way.
And you've made a lot of changes, but from what I remember, you weren't enjoying your home life a whole ton a lot. I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, back then it was really, really rough, and a lot has changed in, over 3 years, and man, I love my life these days.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So people were listing this, and we kept kind of overhearing them going connection and the connection, and we were trying to think of like, did you feel connected when you were gambling with other people?
No. I mean, at times, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
maybe if somebody sitting next to me was doing well and it just, like, kind of had that, like, if you're sitting next to somebody who's doing good and you kinda had that vibe, then maybe you just chit-chat a little bit, but not really. Not
Yeah.
really. Like, even when I went with, friends or family, it was like, "Oh, we did this as a group thing," right? But I would
Mhm.
never see them. Like, we would all disperse. Like, we might meet to eat, but then that was it. There was no conversation, there was nothing, and there towards the end, I would just be annoyed. And my mom is probably watching this, but I would be like, "Mom, like, go do something else. I'm trying to play here." And I hate that. I hate that I was like that.
You're not like that anymore.
Not
So
at all.
you were doing the best you could, but yeah, I get it. So I don't know. That was just like connection is. It felt like I was gambling because I didn't have a lot of connection. I just felt so lonely all my life, and that gave me a little reprieve from it of just feeling good, even though I didn't feel loved or cherished. But at Smart Recovery, one of the things that Brian Ward talked about was the things that they're kind of doing really well with. So, for example, when the pandemic hit, remember how like just meetings shut down? We have decimated. I want to be full of hyperbole here, but the community mutual aid meetings like GA or any of the addiction recovery meetings out there, they used to have chair people and places to go and big memberships and people at home groups. Like that is not coming back super fast, and it was just
No.
gone. And that was the time when people needed it the most. That it was pretty. It kind of seems like a bad dream, like that whole chunk of time. But Smart Recovery hopped online immediately. They got the IT people fired up, and they were buying just Zoom licenses one after another. They had like thousands of meetings around the world that people could go to, and they didn't have. Remember Zoom bombing? That was a little trouble I had in
I
trying to.
think I think
Mhm.
so there's still a lot of that going around in some of the bigger meetings.
Zoom bombing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of traumatizing for people that you have a public address and folks will come in and take over the sound or the visuals, and it's really disruptive. But they did great in making the world a smaller place for people to be able to access it, and that's what we need. If you live in a rural area or you don't like wearing pants, or I mean, there's lots of reasons. You're tired. You don't want to
Well, and it's
drive.
hard in the middle of the week and you've worked all day and your meeting is maybe an hour or like half an hour or 45 minutes away in a different direction. It's like I struggled with that where my local meetings were. Um, I lived 45 minutes away from the closest meeting in the opposite direction. And it was an hour and a half between the time I got off work and then the meeting time. And that hour and a half was a big window of like trouble. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to drive all the way home and then come all the way back just to drive all the way back home. So it was like I would have to spend an hour and a half doing something. And, if you're in those early days of gambling, that could be, or gambling recovery, that could be a trying time.
Just having time on your hands, but especially that magic chunk of no structure time where then something else has to happen and you're already out, which is why it's great to have not so much online gambling, because you can do this from bed while you're stoned in the middle of the night, 24 hours. There's no stop time, but you are already out with shoes on and pants on, I assume, and time to to use up until you had your meeting, and in early recovery. And another thing we learned is that there's like system 1 and system 2 ways of things happening. And system 1 is just like emotional self-regulation, of that you're not just kind of out of your head all the time. Or like with me and my neurodiversity, I'm really super sensitive. Like it's hard for me to be in a church basement with tile floors, sitting on metal chairs next to people that open and close pens. Like that was really difficult for me to do that. I'd much prefer the Zoom format that I'm more relaxed, and it's really helped me that way. So I don't know, SMART did a great job with that. One of the things that he listed that isn't quite nailing it yet is there's not a ton of sense of community that other programs may have, that come to my barbecue, or let's go on a retreat, or give me a call. I think people that practice SMART recovery tend to like come and sit down and learn the skill and do a check-in and kind of go off on their own. But one of the things we learned at the conference is people do come here for fellowship, and we got to figure out how to enhance that more, that there's like a lot more relationships. Should I say what SMART is? Do people know about it?
Go ahead and share. I know when Ward was on, we did talk a little bit about it. We were talking about some different things, but go ahead,
Well, I mean, it's based on cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the grandparent of a lot of other kinds of therapy programs, like rational emotive therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. And I mean, we can go on and on, but it's really about how your thoughts affect your feelings, affect your behaviors. And so that's one of the main things you do in SMART is go, well, I could do this. Do I want that? What are the pros and cons of it? And then I'm going to choose. It's a lot about choosing, which is a little different than powerlessness. And so I'm going to choose to do this instead. And so I kind of try to go through the day thinking like, well, I can choose to move all my stuff to be in a space that I have better internet, to be able to do this tonight and have a better experience. Like, it's my choice. I can do that. Do I want to do that? I do that. So you do that all the time. And then you can cover a lot of compulsive behaviors, because most of us have more than one. I mean, did you just have gambling or?
No, spending was always a problem for me as well. But yeah, I think even just, compulsion has been in my life, I think my whole life.
Yeah. And it's probably gonna be like it comes back and as something else. Yeah. My TikToking. I'm trying to get.
Well, when I stopped gambling, my spending went into kind of compulsive, because for one, I think it was money terrified me. I thought if I had money, then that was a trigger to me gambling. So then I started buying like shoes. And if you know me, I love shoes. But it was just kind of I was still working on how to address the behaviors, right? The internal issues and all that. So it really, through my own therapy work and recovery work, I was able to really kind of hone that in and really address, the financial side of things, those behaviors, those spending habits. And they still, I'm going to be honest, they still occasionally show up for me. I'm not 100% perfect on that, but as far as the spending goes, or even just the compulsive, even though I don't, gambling isn't part of that, but it still shows up in different ways.
Yeah. Oh, so here's another thing about that is like it's the wanting. That's a Ray Liotta line from a movie. I thought, like, it's the wanting. The whole dopamine story we're telling about gambling or compulsive behaviors, about just wanting dopamine, it's not that. It's the wanting things that we like, and that when you get what you want, are you sated? Like you're gambling and you won, or you're like, yay, got it. Now I'm gonna go do yoga or something.
Yeah, no.
So it's a brain function that's different than just those dendrites and neural pathways and neurotransmitters and reuptake and that kind of thing. That's definitely happening. But we're building like a really strong superhighway in just different parts of the brain that are reward centers. And you combine that with habits, and you combine that with like endorphins. And so I'm finding that this wanting thing is a whole nother part of my addiction story. Like, okay, I eat healthy, I work out, I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke cigarettes. Like I've chiseled away at a lot of the triaged bigger addiction problems. It still comes out sideways in some things. Like, so can I talk about something that's not gambling related?
No, we absolutely don't talk about anything outside of gambling.
Okay, I don't want to anyway.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So we were at a conference once. Do you remember Andrew Shire?
Fantastic speaker.
Yeah, we should drop his podcast in, Talking Addiction. He has guests.
I don't know how to do that.
Okay, sorry. How to run your show.
Don't put any technical things on me. Pat is not here.
So y'all have a Google machine and you're interested. It's called Talking Addiction. And Andrew Shire's a therapist. Oh, he had the best thing about relapse. He said he had type 1 diabetes. And when he goes to his endocrinologist once a year, maybe it's right after the holidays, the physician will say, oh, I don't know anything about your HC1 or whatever. I don't know what that is.
A1C. A1C. Just clarify that. As a diabetic, it is A1C.
Your A1C is elevated. You have it. Does your endocrinologist ever go, Christina, you've relapsed. I'm looking at your A1C and it is off the charts. Clearly, you have gotten into the cookie tin or something.
I mean, they've never used the term relapse. They've just been like, you obviously aren't taking your meds and you're obviously eating like shit. So that's basically what they say to me.
So you have a chronic condition that's going to take maintenance and tools ongoing. Well, like we do, we have gambling, probably going to have to stay on that for a hot minute. And it's going to come out as other things over time. So I just really like how he presents things, because I don't love the term of like you relapsed and reset your date. I mean, of course, let's have transparency. I have been struggling with just thinking about cryptocurrency lately. Like, that won't trigger people, but there's going to be an event soon that wealth could be made, and I'm aware of it. So that helps to talk about it and be transparent. So one of the things that Talking Addiction podcast had on it was this woman that wrote a book called something like Confessions of a Hollywood Sex Addict. She used to be an actress on Smallville, Brienne something, and I'll look it up. But I'm like, that's interesting. Like that he's covering that, because you don't often hear much other process addiction. You especially don't hear people talk about sex addiction or love addiction. And it turns out like there's this whole huge amount of people that have attachment issues like I do, where, I don't know, have you ever like had a crush on someone, or you don't want to get your heart broken, so you push people away. It just comes out sideways in a lot of different ways. And it has to do with probably our childhood and engagement with our families and attunement. I've been loved really well in my life. I've had 2 very long-term relationships with secure attachment. And just lately I've been like, oh wait, there's something weird going on where, I don't know, someone broke up with me and it just like broke my heart and I didn't see it coming, and it really affected me. And I gotta like get on top of that and use some of these same tools. So here we are at this SMART conference, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to talk about this. I really believe in putting vulnerability out there. And so we were having a meeting, and I just said, like, yeah, here's something I'm going through, which is compulsive behaviors. And it's not just, like dating. It's like with friends too. When I'll go like, Christina, you have to help me with my work. Can can you please make sure I get this done or something? And you're kind of like, I mean, I can try, but I can't make you do it. I can show up for you, or I can offer to help. So it's just like a lot of sorting out boundaries and self-love and being clear in communication. We have a comment. Should we read it?
Yeah, there's actually a ton, and I'm doing my best to stay on top of everything. And I just want to say, War 66, Warren, I'm so happy for your days, and for your 72 days. And it is tough when you're traveling with families, with people who gamble, and you're trying to be abstinent. And I think you're getting some really good support in the chat. And yeah, that's tough. It's tough, especially when you don't really want to reveal it to everybody, right? You don't want to tell everybody, hey, I can't gamble because it's been a problem. And then that opens yourself up to the questions, and kind of like when you're just not ready to do that. And so I'm glad that Ward and everybody's giving you some good advice there. And then I think, let's see, there's a good comment here on Kitty. What was it that SMART did offer, if not a strong community? Fantastic question.
I think of it as a tool belt, and there's a couple key tools that I can apply to so many things. So we know about how to do a list of pros and cons, and I think there were pros to gambling. It really helped me escape from this alien body I live in and this cluttered mind. It just gave me a break for a little bit. And I like that they kind of acknowledge that it was nice. Like, a lot of us will be like, yeah, gambling freaking rocked. Like, nothing feels like that. Also has a ton of consequences that I don't want anymore and aren't worth it and aren't consistent with my values. But let's acknowledge that there were good things about it, and then figure out a way to fill those in. So if I need to fill them in of that, I just didn't feel like a lot of enjoyment in life. Well, now I have my foster bulldogs that are pretty, right?
They're adorable.
Yeah, and community. Like, I did find community because I quit gambling and I leaned into doing stuff to have a balanced life. And I found you, baby girl,
Yeah,
and our pod. And I found Dave Yeager, which we're going to talk about. So that it helped me. I don't do good with shame. I needed to forgive myself and correct some cognitive distortions of like that I'm unlovable and broken. That's my main thing. I can plug that into being cut off in traffic, and that's helped me stop doing that. To be like, maybe they didn't see me. Could that be why they cut me off, and not because I'm unlovable? So correcting that. Do you have a unhealthy, unwelcome belief you want to?
No, I'm perfect.
Good, that's what we're after.
No, I struggle so much with that imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? Like, I struggle so much, like, just not being good enough, right? Like, I feel like, who am I to be trying to help people? Who am I to be doing this stuff? Like, who am I to build out this self-help guide, or like do things that people ask? And it's like, yeah, I really struggle with that. I mean, you saw that when we first came in. I'm like, I'm not good at this. And it's just one of those things where I do struggle with that negative self-talk a lot. And, that's something I try and work on. And I have this wonderful group of people. I have the most supportive family. Hi, Mom. She gave me a heart on the comments. And it's just like, but it's still, sometimes it's so hard. And I think in this space, and I know will 100% agree with me, is like, there's so much vulnerability, to put ourselves, like, doing this live on and to, there's no editing. So if something sometimes misses the filter and flies out of my mouth, like, that's something that's just going to be out there. And so, there's all these little things that I just am constantly second guessing about myself. And so to answer your question, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And I know because you know that about yourself, and you can say, I'd like to like do a change plan worksheet is something that SMART teaches us of like, what do you want to fix? Yours could possibly be something like, I'd like to address my imposter syndrome thoughts and have them decrease. And then is that important to do? How important? What's your confidence in that you could do it? How will you know it's working? What are the steps to do it, and break it down. And so it just kind of puts a little bit of a system to it that takes not very long. And I've done change plan worksheets on so many things and not done them, but mapped it out. And then I eventually did them. That it just takes what it takes. It can, and for people that are in the chat that still have gambling happening, you're doing it. This is your recovery. You show up for a thing and you learn maybe one little nugget that resonates, and you go like, oh, these feel like my people, that they understand, they've been through it, or they've gotten some relief from it. Let's hang with them. Yeah, do that. And then it goes away. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like you're exploring it, right? You're trying to better understand what's going on with you, with your relationship with gambling, and where to seek the resources that you need, whether it's therapy. And I always recommend everybody go to therapy. Like that is such a wonderful tool. And there's a lot of online therapy out there right now. There's a lot of gambling specific therapists spread out. There's not enough. I don't think there's ever going to be enough for the amount of gambling harm right now, but there are a lot of people dedicated to this community and to helping those of us struggling. And there are a lot of great tools that you can find those resources. And you can go to, Brian has a really good website with resources. It's endgamblingharm.com, I believe. I think the link is on the page, and he's got a lot of those great resources, but that's a good place to start. I always like to share resources when I can. Jump into the conversation. Now, Kitty, I have a question about SMART. Now, a lot of times when I'm talking to people about recovery and 12-step groups and things like that, they like religion or spirituality, it's such a big question sometimes for people. And it sometimes will shy them off from 12 steps that are kind of spiritually focused. How does SMART play into that? For somebody who maybe isn't religious or spiritual, like SMART would be a good tool, right? Or does it put for somebody who's just struggles with that? A lot of people struggle with that, about that.
Well, I mean, Brian Ward and I are finding that, and I mentioned him because he's president of Voices Problem Gambling Recovery and does exclusively our one-on-one peer work there. So he works with clients constantly that are new and saying, I need help. Where should I go? And the party line in the past has been go to Gamblers Anonymous. And because there just wasn't an awareness of other things that could work well, we're finding that gambling, especially, and I've had a lot of addictions, so I feel like competent to speak to this, but gambling especially seems to be kind of more of a brain wiring thing than out and out chemical, of just the, to have to dispute that it's going to work for you kind of thing. So to go somewhere that has a heavy spiritual component did not feel like what I needed. I liked the fellowship of it. I found it useful to do an inventory, make amends. Like I've been in 12-step for 35 years and found it incredibly useful in many ways. But even with all the tools I had to do, like letter to the agnostics and substitute the word higher power for truth. You can, in the 12 steps, you can just switch out truth, because I want to be honest with myself. And that's one way. Or you could have your higher power be friends or people in the group that know more or further along on their journey. There's lots of ways. It still never resonated for me that way. I just respond better to looking at how my thoughts relate to my feelings, relate to my behaviors, and making choices and having agency. And there are certainly people that do both. And when I think of it, like when you go to your endocrinologist, do they talk about your ACL1?
A1, my A1C.
And then do y'all pray together over it, or is that part of?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So can they just do medical, diagnostic medicine, those things are their wheelhouse? And can you pray on Sunday or pray with your family or do a spiritual thing that's a part of your whole life all day, every day, though not specifically in that half hour you're spending with your medical doctor? And does that still make your medical doctor a good doctor?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So who says that spirituality has to be part of a compulsive behavior? 12-step does. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't a spiritual issue. I have attachment issues, like people in community, and that could be part of spirit. But I didn't find that that was what I needed. There are certainly people here at this conference that equally are as engaged in GA as they are in SMART and like serve on their board and just rock it so hard. Brian Ward did that, both programs simultaneously. Like you do this when you go to soccer practice and you do this when you go to basketball practice. They're different. There's some things that overlap, but they're different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, in the comments, like spirituality, I haven't been able to talk today, can be a huge component in recovery. It can give, if you're a spiritual person and it's something that really feeds your soul and helps you kind of get back on track with those values that you have. But I think it's great that there's an alternative, right? If it's something, it would just really surprise me, that a lot of people do struggle with that aspect of it. And I struggled with it too, but I've been able to learn more about my own values, my own beliefs, through just my own recovery process. But I wanted it to be like, I think it's important to share, that SMART can be a good alternative if that's something that you struggle with. And it's got some really amazing, like, I love it feels very mindset shifted. You've talked a lot about that. And it's a lot of rewiring work, right? And just the work that you do. And it's very, it kind of like, I've been to, I think, 3 SMART meetings. One of them you hosted, which was fabulous. And, I loved the worksheet aspect of it for some reason, which is very different than my GA meetings. My GA meetings, a lot of times we read out of books and it was shares, but I loved kind of the change worksheets and those types of things. I loved working through those. It felt very, I don't know, very guided. And that was really nice too.
Mm-hmm. And did it take away from your spiritual practices or your engagement with GA?
No, I could see where people could do it simultaneously. Like, I definitely could see it. You get parts of it from this and parts of this. And even if you don't want to do any kind of a 12-step, there's so many other ways that we can find recovery. And that could be listening to podcasts, interacting in online groups. Reddit has some really amazing sub threads of problem gambling. And I think a lot of people connect really well with that kind of aspect too.
I think that's another thing I think we got out of this conference is looking at, we're using the word alternative. Let's like break that. You know how I am about words. I just want to be really, is that the right word kind of thing? I don't eat fluffy animals. So sometimes I do want a burger, but then the idea of eating a fluffy animal kind of wigs me out or something. And so it's called like meat alternative kind of thing. And it's like, well, is that what it is? Or is it like food? Like it's just food, even though I don't know. Or like near beer. I have one. I like these. I don't drink beer. I don't want to be drunk. I kind of like that flavor. It sort of feels fun kind of thing. And so that's another thing that was on Andrew Shear's Talking Addiction. He had the guy from a beer company talking about how like you don't have to just market non-alcohol beers to people that had alcohol use disorder. There's lots of reasons to not drink alcohol. You might have to work tomorrow. You get headaches from it. You're calories, or you're going to have one beer with alcohol and one not to kind of pace yourself, or DUIs and driving. There's lots
Gluten
of
intolerance.
Is there gluten in beer?
I don't know.
Does it
That's why I
affect
just threw
your
it out there.
HMT1? No. Stop. Okay. So there's good reasons. So is that what this product is fake beer? That's what I sometimes call it. Is that the best name for it? Did you know that light bulbs used to be made of like gas, was how things were lit, houses, like burned fuel coming out of it. So when they made light bulbs, they were called something like non-gaseous emitting like mechanisms. So they were defined by what they are not, like what was taken away. Like, let's just have like blue oceans. Like, let's just have it be its own thing. This is a multi beverage and it happens to have 0% alcohol. And this is a plant-based protein that makes a delicious hot sandwich or taco or whatever. And so when smart is like an alternative, it can also be a complement or a whole kind of different genre of support kind of thing. And it's just, I don't know, I guess I just really want people to know that it's not going to take away from their GA experience, and that they're tools that Ward and I have found extremely helpful in our lives, to the point that we're like, yeah, we're feeling like more into this than ever, and already like planning next year what we're going to help the other facilitators learn about cross addiction. How many of us have more than one co-occurring challenge with our addiction? If it's, or even like an accessory addiction, like you may not have trouble with alcohol. Do you drink at all?
Not really.
Not really.
Occasionally. Yeah, not really.
So those folks that now and then may have 2 or 3 at your cousin's wedding or something, could that lower your ability to think through long-term consequences to the point the gambling happens? So you don't have alcohol use disorder. You know, that's not really a problem, but it becomes an accessory addiction or a gateway that beckons the gambling addiction. And if that's the case, would it be better to just be like, yeah, I'm just not gonna at all? It's not worth it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's, you know what, when I talk to a lot of women in the community, a lot of times it's food. Food shows up a lot of time. It wasn't necessarily something I struggled with, and I've shared this, I don't know how many times, I apologize if you guys have heard this, but how I identified with my own addiction was watching a show about food addiction. Shout out to My 600-Pound Life, if anybody's caught that in the middle of the night after a binge. But that's exactly what happened to me. And it was this woman explaining her own feelings of food, you know, how she felt before she ate, how she felt during the meal, and how she felt after she ate. And it was like I connected with each of those feelings, like, you know, the anticipation of the meal, and then when you're eating the meal,
wanting,
yes, how you felt. You felt high, you felt great. And then the self-loathing, and like, why did I do this to myself, you know? And I connected with every single one of her emotions, and it was just like something went off in me. Like, I knew it was causing problems, but I think there was a lot of it me not wanting to connect with the gambling with the problem. Like, I had made a lot of different changes, hoping that it was anything but that. And you know, not really connecting with the addiction side of it until I watched that show one night, and I was like, okay. And then that's when I tried to stop on my own. I tried to be like, okay, well, this needs to stop. And I went, like I said, about 60 days and relapsed hard and had a binge for a week, and then brought me to my knees. And that's when I looked for recovery. So, but it
Can
was
I come in that War 66 was just mentioning honeymoon. Did you have a honeymoon?
let's see. Still no urge, maybe. Oh, okay. So like sometimes I know for me, when I first entered that recovery in March of 21, like I didn't want to gamble. I was so broke by my gambling. Like I was so broke by all my behavior. I was just like sick of myself, right? I didn't want to go or see another casino for months. And it wasn't until, let's see, that was March of 21. It wasn't until the holiday season of that year that I really felt any kind of urges. And I don't necessarily know if I connect that with urges or if I connect that with nostalgia of that was time that I spent with other people
Mm-hmm.
gambling, and it just felt like a connection of like family and friends and celebration and all that. That's when those urges. But is there a honeymoon phase, do you
Mm-hmm.
think?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How long does it normally last, or is it different for everyone?
Well, I mean, here's what I would say about it. It doesn't have to happen. I think we're so relieved to not have the consequences that uh, life gets enjoyable again really fast, to not just be pummeled by the horrid things that happen. We're in the throes of the gambling addiction. And so you get that relief, and then you get some of your needs met that could have been causing it. That could be, good night, Nathan, thanks for coming. So you start getting those needs met, like you make friends by going to GA or joining the Broke Girl Society, and you're like, oh, I'm feeling connected, and gosh, that's kind of something I needed all along. And so that could be joyous, like honeymoony. And at some point, you still got to do the deep dive, the slog, because we need consistency. You know how long this takes. That's one thing we learned yesterday, is the addictive behaviors of gambling are about 12 years. And Brian Ward and I have said this all along. Why our state that has plenty of money for gambling gives people 1 year of services, and then maybe a second year you can get a variance. And we're like, oh no, my sweet summer child, we're just getting started at that point of stabilizing. You have to work these into losing a job and losing a partner and losing some dogs and like all the big life things that happen, and see how you do with your tools of not gambling. So it goes on for a really long time. And just the variance of being in a living hell to not being in a living hell is pretty profound, like vertical feel good curve. And then you still got to pay your taxes and go to work and clean your garage.
Yep. Still got to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about who we met with?
Yeah.
All right. You set it all up. You did the work on this, but I'm not sure if a lot of you are aware of the GRIT Act, which is the Gambling Recovery Investment and Treatment Act, that they're trying to get federal funding for gambling recovery. And this is going to be amazing. We're probably still, a couple of years out from it actually, hopefully seeing some seeing where it's going to land, but it's still very, very exciting to think that there could be the possibility of that. And that's pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, I wonder even if it doesn't pass, if it creates some dialogue with legislators around gambling, and it could be something else in the future. That's kind of how I do my own life goals. Like, I want to be I want to have federal legislation to not have online gambling in any way is my life goal. I'm probably not going to be able to do that. But if along the way, I feel a good sense of contribution and I'm able to impact some other people's lives or mitigate some harm, and I get sidetracked and realize that I was just really interested, that I have like hearing things. We had a sign language translator at the conference, and I'm like, why didn't I stop learning American Sign Language? I really enjoyed that and find it useful. And so now I'm going to get back into that. Like side goals happen, that would be great. So we're gonna keep going after having a very small percentage of the excise tax from online sports operators go towards treatment and prevention in all the states, because a lot of states have nothing, or just whatever people don't get from turning in their scratchy tickets. That unclaimed money is their whole budget for their whole state. So some of them, Las Vegas and stuff, desperately need funded to do treatment and prevention. It's also going to have research, and with my hope that the research will, I'm not saying research is biased by any means, but that it'll be the kind of research that the projects are selected to be really meaningful research projects. And I'm talking about like how tools built into online gambling can help mitigate harm. Like, what if every half hour it goes like, yep, time for a break. We're shutting you down. You need to go get a drink of water and take a walk. And if you still want to gamble again, it'll reset in 10 minutes. Or Like you rent an apartment, they do an affordability check that you're going to be able to pay, or you get a cosigner. Well, why wouldn't we do that for gambling kind of thing? Or that maybe you can't gamble after midnight. We've always had that for alcohol, and there's controls and things, stop time, start time.
Yeah,
Things.
like the bars usually close at 2 a.m. Like last call is usually 1 a.m. Like would be nice if something was similar for gambling for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So should we do research on that kind of stuff that's robust? And everyone knows, I think Nathan Smith was here for a while, but anything we can do to support good researchers doing good research. And the fact of the matter is they have to be funded by someone. And who's interested in this incredibly not sexy topic? Like, we've always thought
Right.
we need
Well,
more. Yeah.
I have to say real quick before we talk about the congresswoman that we got to talk to, I've seen some of those surveys and questionnaires that they send out, and a lot of it is like based on the morality. Like, some of the questions are like, do you think it's moral to gamble? And it's like, that is irrelevant. And like, I guess they're trying to gauge what people's ideas of gambling, but I just don't see where that information, and I am not a researcher, so I think Nate hopped off. Sorry, Nate. But like I don't get where that's going to do any help. I mean, the stigma's already there, right? Us talking about it, us being open about our journeys, that's going to do a lot to break that stigma. And maybe there is something to understand how people look at gambling, but that's not really going to help us get to the point of how are we going to change the harm, right? Like, how are we going to do that? Some of those questions, I'm just like, why? Like, why are we taking 6 questions out of this 10 question survey? And it's more about values and how people think versus like, how could we do better? How could we educate your kids? How did you find out about gambling? Kind of those hard hitting questions myself.
Why do you reckon they do that?
I honestly can't answer that. Why do you reckon they do?
I can't read the chat, so I wonder if anyone reckons that by demonizing us, that takes the onus off the operators from contributing to addiction. Yeah. So we're just kind of assholes.
Well, right. And I guess if you're looking at that sense, and I try and walk a line to this perspective, but when you look at the industry not really recognizing that there is an issue or that there is a problem, then that would make sense if they're kind of mitigating those questions to be like, let's just keep it onto the people.
Yeah.
We don't want to take any onto us, like, because gambling is not any more addicted than your cell phone is.
Remember in the
according to the industry. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
When Robert Sackler was like, hammer the abuser, like put it on us. So yeah, we were talking about responsible gambling to counter. So we met with Congresswoman Representative Andrea Salinas from Oregon. Yay, go Oregon. And she is co-sponsoring with Earl Blumenthal from Connecticut the GRIT Act. And they know that it's going to take a while to rally support from other legislators. She even mentioned that she was kind of surprised that it's such a no-brainer. It's not adding any tax. Like, who cares where it goes? Why wouldn't we want to help people, especially help people who we know are disproportionately impacted, socioeconomically marginalized ethnic groups that have generational racism in their court? Like, why would we? Isn't that what we do, is try to create equity and protect each other and help people that need things like this fixed? So when we met with her, and with the whole pod was there for the most part, Dave Yeager and like we just had the Voices of Problem Gambling Speakers Bureau has some pretty big players with a wide reach, including yourself. And I felt so proud that our voice was heard and we were able to help educate. Is that what you do? Legislators, or inform, I think might be the word, of just language we use. It started with hearing the word gaming, that she wanted to do this to help people with their gaming problem. Did you have a gaming problem?
No, I had a gambling
I
problem.
had a gambling problem. A gam.
Yeah. There wasn't any I mean, yeah, I think of that too when people I think gaming, when you say it's gaming, and gaming is a legitimate problem for different, for the youth and for certain people, gaming addiction can be a problem, but those are two separate things. When I think of gaming, I think of console gaming, those types of things. I don't think of it as gambling. And I think so, yeah, I think it's important to kind of make sure that language is appropriate for the situation at hand. And what I really liked about that conversation with her is another person in the group asked, "Well, how can we best support you? What do you need from us to continue to support you in this work?" And she said, what I really need is to hear more stories of people who've been impacted." And I was like, that is amazing.
Mhm.
That she just wants to hear people's experience so that she can really better understand it, because she hadn't had experience with gambling, right? She didn't really know anybody impacted by gambling in her own circle. And so she really wanted to understand not only those who struggled with gambling addiction, but the loved ones who were impacted by gambling harm. And I thought that was really, I really, she earned some respect for me there, not only for the work that she's doing, but because, she really wanted to hear our stories, and she wants to hear more. And I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really powerful. People listen to us. And I'd like to see us continue to share best practices with each other on how to do that, like when to do it, where in your recovery, what's your informed consent of deciding to go public. You and I talk about that all the time, of non-anon and being in the public eye, and how it puts the target on you, and just so many like levels of it, of as women, middle-aged women, were already kind of in people's line of fire of just trying to have, I don't know, acceptance. And it's scary. And when you live in a small town, or your boss is going to find out like when to do that, or what words do we use, or do we talk about particular programs we're involved in and stuff. So I'm glad the GRID Act is creating dialogue. In the gaming discussion, there's a new thing. It's called the Responsible Online Gaming Association, and I had to go check it. It's not people that were addicted to Parcheesi or solitaire.
Solitaire.
Solitaire, like Brian Ward had a solitaire problem that got him here. Sorry.
Solitaire didn't nearly cost him his family. That's true. There's a big
Um,
difference.
so that's another way that the industry is judging stuff in a pretty kind of covert way to make it innocent. Like, this is gaming. It's not. It makes us want to kill ourselves. The suicidality rate is higher than any other addiction, and just huge financial consequences and social costs, and affects 10 people for every one of us that's close to us, and creates like generational harm, and like there's so much to it. So please don't, it's offensive to water it down that way. And so this new thing came out of the Responsible Online Gaming Association, and it's going to be about responsible gambling. And I just have nothing to lose, frankly, by saying I think responsible gambling is essentially shit. Everything that I have ever seen along the lines of investing and telling people to set a time and a budget does not change the 2.6% adults in Oregon that have problem gambling disorder, whether we put those signs up or not. There's no profound evidence that that matters, that the 8% of adults in Oregon are going to have some form of gambling harm. 8, really? And then when we're online, and it's probably going to triple like it is in the UK, does telling people to set a budget be like, oh, right, I was going to set a budget, I'll stop now, when you're just in that like freaking blackout fugue of, stroking your striatum in your brain for reward? No, that like it's not effective.
I think about all the times I set a budget and a time limit. Like, I think about all the times where I was driving myself to the casino and I'm like, I'm only going to be in here an hour and I've got this amount of money and that's it. Like, I left my cards at home, all these things. And, 3 hours later, I'm out of money and I go home to get my cards that I left just to go back. Like, and I think about that, and I think about the place where that can, I think there are a few people that maybe can who kind of have that self-awareness, but it's not a lot that have that self-awareness before it really starts to harm them in all facets of life. But it's pretty rare that somebody has that self-awareness that their gambling is starting to kind of take this turn, because it felt like for me, I gambled a really long time before it started to cause harm. And that progression was so slow of like when I started pushing that budget, pushing that time limit, when I deemed it was okay to gamble and when it wasn't. Like I started to just, that all just started to kind of, and before you know it, like whatever those budgets and those time limits I set, like it just didn't mean anything anymore. And it was that, but I wasn't aware during that transition, right? Where it became entertainment to my coping mechanism of life to harmful. Like I have no idea. Like looking back now, I can see it, hindsight, right? But when I was in it, I had no idea when it was starting to change for me. Does that make sense? And so it's like now when I hear a lot of those, and like I say, I try and walk the line, right? But of what I say, try and be respectful as best as I can. But when I hear that, and I love that you bought us these little irresponsible pins, I saved it and I'm going to wear it for all the conferences. I've got 3 conferences in the next few months. I'm going to wear it on each of my thing. And because I feel like that, I feel like just the thought of being, so if we're not responsible, we're irresponsible. And there's truth to that. I can honestly say, yeah, I was irresponsible with my time and my money, but to me, it shifts the blame, right? Like I can connect with it in some ways, but in other ways, it's still just saying, hey, we told you to be responsible. It's not on us. So we're not to blame here. And I hate that because they have their own casinos where they build these machines and they do them on like games or videos or whatever that they know people enjoy. And so they deliberately build out these machines that people are going to instantly go to. It's like they're building these machines to be addicted by design. But yet, hey, we told you to set a time and a budget. So.
Yeah. Well, so this we're all like, okay, go Grid Act. I mean, frankly, treatment, it would be great to avoid to have treatment too. Like my thing is let's have federal regulation and make it so operators can't get people to go from cucumber to pickle, because trying to go back to cucumber after pickle is pretty complicated. It's taken me a lot of work, and I don't want everyone to have to go through that. But that's never going to happen. We're never going to have federal regulation to not have online sports. It's a big money grab right now. And so we might as well figure out how we're going to try to mitigate some of the harm. And so we came up with Grid Act, and it's finally getting some support, and we have some sponsors, and it's like, okay, go team, nothing to lose. Seems like a no-brainer for the Grid Act to go through. And the sports operators were all like, no, we're not going to support that. Like just the different gaming associations are very against it. And it's like, but why? Are you against like living or healing or science? Do you hate science? Like, we don't understand why. And so now there's the ROGA, and guess how much money they've raised for their first year to start doing research and stuff?
I'm going to say 20 mil because you told me that.
Okay.
Yeah, you already told me about it. But I was really shocked that 20 million. Like, so much. And we can't get any kind of, like, it's so hard to get any funding or support for treatment. And it's just so, I mean, there are some states that are actually losing funding in their gambling recovery treatment. Even as their gambling numbers are going upwards, they're still like reducing spending. And it just, yeah, we could talk about this all night, but we're coming up on our 10 o'clock hour.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So it's concerning that all of that 20 million comes from, I think, like their top 8 new members: FanDuel, DraftKings, Fanatics. I'm not saying that the research is going to be corrupt just because it all came from the sports operators. I just, when you like, you ever have see like a server flirt with someone at a restaurant, like, hope you enjoy your hamburger, honey, or something like that.
Sure.
There's money being exchanged there. Like, there's like a tip involved, a gratuity. So I don't know, just whenever there's like money involved, I kind of want to like follow the money trail. And that's a really complicated part of what's going to happen with the future of people being able to have good research and good services and reduce stigma when we have this kind of thing of an incredibly well-funded research group. So hopefully they'll be able to have their sponsors mutually exclusive from the good work they're going to do. And in their defense, they've hired an executive director, Dr. Jennifer Shatley, who's very well respected. So I guess we, if it gets back to her, to let her know that there's people with lived experience that really care and really want to see good research, and we have some ideas of what that research could look like, hit us up. We're here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for watching tonight. And thank you so much, Kitty, for just bringing your brilliance to the masses tonight. And thank you all so much for interacting with us in the comments. It makes it so much easier when I know people are watching, especially people that are, people I know and see. And hi, Mom, again. So, yep. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ward, for being so active in the chat. And you guys have a wonderful evening and hopefully a bet-free week. So, all right. Thanks so much.
Good night.